Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Hot Toys Star Wars The Mandalorian 1/6 scale figure unboxing and review. Now today we are taking a look at none other than Durasteel Mando and the Blurrg. Now it's been a while since Mando wore this outfit all the way back in Season 1, and it's been a good while since we've seen a Blurrg, but nevertheless, I'm still really excited to get them out here. Now, I got mine from toyswonderland.com. Link for that is in the description below. They do have installment plans and a points-based reward system. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button so you're notified as soon as a brand new review goes live on the channel. As for the box art, it's quite literally the largest Hot Toys Star Wars box that I have ever seen. It's bigger than the Scout Trooper and Speeder Bike, it's significantly larger than any of the 2-packs. You'll see what I mean when you get yours in hand. Up front, an image of Mando riding the Blurrg. Yes, those are the figures. Down below, the wraparound banner with Mando once again and the Blurrg in the background. Not only is this box huge, it's also really heavy, and I suspect the culprit is the Blurrg, so I had to flip it off camera, but on the back, a bunch of warnings and legal info. On the inside, we have an absolutely stunning image of both Blurrg and Mando once again. Yes, the actual figures. But underneath that, we've got Mando, and you can see just how big this darn Blurrg really is. Now, the Blurrg itself takes up pretty much the entire package, so yeah, good luck trying to find a spot to keep this darn thing in your collection. Will it fit in a detolf? Even though we're early on in the video, no, it won't fit in a detolf. This thing is enormous. What we are going to do now, though, is get all of the accessories that come with Mando laid out in the light box, take a closer look at everything he comes with, starting off with what's missing first. Oh, you thought we were going straight for the display base, and we will, don't you worry. Now, with the original, you got pretty much everything in the middle, except for this big honkin' display base. You didn't get the flame effect and the grappling hook. Those came with the deluxe Beskar Mando. But you did get an electricity effect for the ambient phase pulse rifle. You don't get that here. You also don't get that horrible sand footprint diorama display base with the spikes and the Stormtrooper helmet. No love lost from me. You do, however, get this huge diorama display base. It's a rocky outcrop. You've got some pegs up on top for the Blurrg. But if you wanted to, you could totally pop some more rocks up top to hide these posts and maybe use this with Boba and Mando. It's totally doable. I like the way it's sculpted. It's made of this kind of softer vinyl, but the texture is good. It's well painted with multiple washes and some dry brushing. And underneath, it's all glossy plastic. That might mean this could slide around in the cabinet. Fingers crossed when you have the Blurrg on, it keeps it planted. We have seen all of this stuff before, so I'll try not to bore you. I'll be relatively quick. The flame effect is cast in translucent plastic, orange for the end and blue towards the clip section. We will try this out on Mando a little bit later. We also get the grappling hook. The hook part is made of plastic, but it's nice and shiny, whereas the rod piece is real metal. Both shoulder pads attached with Velcro. One is Beskar, and I really like the way it's painted. It's super dirty and grimy towards the edges, whereas this one is kind of like a Shore Trooper shoulder pad. It's got some shiny silver metallic sections where the paint has been chipped away, and it too is nice and grimy. Unfortunately, we do miss out on the blast or electricity effect for the rifle, but we still get the rifle, and I liked it originally, and I like it here too. You can remove the scope if you want to have Mando holding it. Now, it's tricky to plug in on camera, but it's keyed, so it only goes in the correct position. You can also open up this top piece if you want to pose him to make it look like he's loading it. There's a pleather strap and a teeny tiny pin you'll see where that goes on Mando when we bring him out here. The back section kind of looks like wood with this printed wood grain. Then the front has this heat-treated metal look with some speckling of dirt, plus multiple colors including gold, purple, and blue. I still absolutely love this pistol, and it looks just as good here as it did with the original. It's got this very subtle silver dry brushing on the bottom section. The handle is done in brown, and even though I still think a blast effect would have been really awesome to plug in, I'm still pretty happy with this blaster. But like I said, I was happy with the 1.0. You do get his little magnetic mine that in the show he magnetizes on various surfaces. I like the metallic red for the middle section. You also get his tracking fob, and luckily the antenna are rubbery plastic, so no worries when it comes to breakage. Lastly, we do get the same array of hands as the 1.0, but this time, they're painted way better. The yellow sections for the fingers are a lot dirtier, they're also darker. The little plate on the back of his hand is also much closer in color to the Shore Trooper shoulder pad versus this one was a little bit grayer or almost whiter. It still has the same print for the dirt and grime, but overall, the new hands, I think, are a significant upgrade. What we are going to do now, though, is get the Blurrg himself out here. Seeing as though the Blurrg is the biggest new thing in the set, and I do mean that quite literally, I thought let's start with him. The biggest takeaway for me is he stands without the display base, and that's a huge win. If you don't have space for the additional height or the width that the display base commands, then you could potentially just go Blurrg only in the collection. Now, the Blurrg is an interesting one. It's both one of the ugliest things I have ever seen in 1/6 scale, but kind of one of the coolest Star Wars creatures as well. I mean, we saw it in Rebels, and I'm pretty sure Clone Wars. Then we eventually saw it in live action in Mandalorian. And Hot Toys weren't scared about making an absolutely enormous creature. Second time I've used that word, and they've delivered the goods. This guy is big, he's well sculpted, and he's really stable, even on two legs with that massive tail. Up close and personal with the Blurrg, I've never reviewed anything like this, so I don't know where to begin. So let's just start up top with the saddle. Now, the saddle itself is fully sculpted as part of the Blurrg, so you can't remove it and have a wild Blurrg herd in the collection. I know, unfortunate, but at the very least, it is nice and stable. So when Mando is sitting on here, he should be locked in position. Now, the texture for the saddle is nicely done. It looks like a padded cushion with a tear on one side. You do have a tear on the other, but they haven't just sculpted this once and digitally flipped it. They are unique sculpts from one side to the other. It's also suitably dirty and grimy. You do have these pieces that would kind of sandwich in between Mando. Once again, nicely textured, well painted, and different colors from one side to the other. Now, the harness piece is made of pleather. These rings are real metal on both sides, and the reins are also pleather. I do like the grain and the thickness. Plus, up top, these kind of tattered bandage sections are made of real fabric. The Blurrg's face is absolutely hideous, but you know, that's the Blurrg, what did you expect? He's kind of got this semi-gloss look to him, like a big honkin' piranha-style biped like he is. You do have some decent texture to the skin, some spots, and the pinkish hue to the mouth and face area. Yeah, I really like it, but it is really nasty. The gums do have some speckling to them, and the teeth are well painted. They're dirty and grimy. Now, I expected the mouth to open, but as you can see, there's a seam line, and this doesn't open, it's locked in position. You do have the reins or the bridle that goes through the mouth, and it is free floating, so it moves around just a little. But by far my favorite part about the Blurrg are the eyes. They look really real. They've got this kind of translucency to them, a little bit of depth, as I said, very realistic. You may be thinking, okay, his mouth can't open, but surely his arms and legs can move. Yes, they can, but only a little. His legs can swivel forward and back, and the hinge isn't super ugly, but it is noticeable from certain angles. The arms can move just a little bit further than the legs can. Don't forget though, the legs do have peg ports that lock into the display base. So it's not like you can really pose this guy in a walking pose. They have to be straight up and down, unless you don't want to use that display base. They're painted in the same style as the body. A base layer of green, there's some speckling on the surface in this kind of grey colour. You also have the black dots, some airbrush shading, and some washes in the crevices. And there are a lot of crevices. He's also a little bit slimy. Once again, he looks kinda real. I'm not blind when I say he looks real, I mean from a puppet/show model perspective in the collection from a distance lit well, this guy's going to absolutely pop, but he's not fooling anyone. He looks a little bit plasticky too, so it's kind of a catch-22 with the material they've chose to make him out of. You do have some shading for the belly and a bunch more black spots, plus a seam line for the tail. I was hoping that would mean the tail is posable, but no, it isn't. It's also made of vinyl, but it's sculpted and painted really well, plus that seam line from the top is almost invisible. And lastly, for those wondering how you attach this guy to his display base, it's super simple. There are pegs on the base and pegs on the Blurrg, so you simply slide him in there. Now you may need to stretch the legs apart just a little to line up the pegs, but he's made of a softer vinyl, so it's not super difficult. Alright, enough Blurrg for just a minute. We will bring him out here again, but we've got to talk about Mando. So here we have him standing straight up and down in the light box. No crazy poses or accessories or anything like that. And if you're thinking, it's pretty boring, it looks exactly like the original, well, it's supposed to. The original was already really good, but don't let first impressions deceive you. This guy is not identical. Now, I had a wish list for stuff that I was hoping Hot Toys would change. Number 1, the padding. Luckily, they did. Number 2, the paint on the armor and the helmet. Also, they did. Number 3, a wired cape. Unfortunately, I didn't get that one, but 2 out of 3 in my mind. Yeah, that ain't bad. I also still love the proportions. I love the way the armor sits flush on the body. Nothing falls off. Nothing is super clunky. Overall, even though it feels like we've seen this guy before, and we mostly have, that was 2 years ago, and Hot Toys have made some drastic improvements. Up close and personal with the Mandalorian. Now, if you've seen the original review, then feel free to skip over this portion, but maybe you wouldn't want to, cause this guy's actually slightly different than the original. Now, starting off with the helmet, it's the same sculpt as the 1.0, but it's not the same finish. This one is way more metallic, and the dirt and grime is a lot dirtier and grimier. It's a little bit more HD looking, and I reckon this one clearly surpasses the original. We will be doing a comparison a little bit later, but this helmet is absolutely stunning. It does sit up high enough on the neck so you can actually see the neck. Now, the helmet itself is hollow. For those wondering if Pedro Pascal's noggin is underneath, unfortunately, no. It isn't. Something that I actually didn't show in the original review, thank you Hot Toys for giving me an opportunity to do this all over again, is this strap right here. Now it simply slots through a hole in his cape. It's a pleather strap with some faux buttons glued onto it, but it's magnetic and it nicely holsters the Amber Phase pulse rifle and kind of keeps it in the correct position. Around the front, the pulse rifle does plug into the harness, but this little plug that slots in is really fragile. I actually broke that clip on my original one, so please be really careful. One of my favorite things about Durasteel Mando is how ragtag it is. It's thrown together. These colors shouldn't really work together, but I don't know what to tell you, they absolutely do. I just wish we'd seen more of Mando wearing this costume in Season 1 and maybe in Season 2. Move on to the Beskar. Now the brown plates are all sculpted out of plastic and they're held on with Velcro, so slightly movable. I love the way they're painted with this reddish brown undertone and some airbrush shading. Then the gunmetal genuinely looks like they've been blasted and scratched, and the metal is showing underneath. It's a really nice effect. And Hot Toys at this point have gotten it down to a science. Whereas on the other side we've got this Shore Trooper-esque shoulder pad which is removable. Again, it's held on with Velcro. And don't forget you've got the Beskar shoulder pad you can pop on in place. My preference is the Shore Trooper one, but it's, as always, down to personal preference. If you want the shoulder pad to better match the helmet, because it absolutely does with the gunmetal finish and the dirt and grime, probably want to go with this one. Don't forget you do have the grappling hook and the flamethrower effect. They're pretty simple to install. This one simply clips onto the gauntlet. It's keyed so it goes in the correct position. And when you slide it in, the nozzle really nicely lines up with the flame. It's a very effective effect piece. The grappling line is much simpler. You slide the metal rod between the shirt fabric and the gauntlet, and you can position it wherever you want it to be. If you want it on the other side, you could technically do that too, but I think that having it on the right side is more accurate. The harness and the belt are both made of pleather, but the pouches are fully sculpted. It just goes to show that when Hot Toys want to, they can make sculpted plastic look a lot like pleather. I mean, that pouch right there, yeah, it's very convincing. You also have some missing cartridges for the ambient phase pulse rifle. Don't worry, nothing is missing. That's actually accurate to the show. If you wanted to remove them and make it look like he's loading the rifle, you absolutely can. You also have his magnetic detonator. This thing falls out of the belt constantly. I don't know if that's mold degradation from Hot Toys using the mold multiple times, but I kinda wish this thing sat in there a little bit more securely. Now his flight jacket, or his flight suit if you will, if you want to count this as one solid thing, it is grey, which is accurate to the Durasteel armor. I like the lighter coloured stitching, and there's even some soiling in the seams. It's subtle, but it's definitely there. You also have that quilted stitching on the back of his elbows, plus another armor plate tucked behind his cape, and you can tell Mando has quite clearly been shot in the back quite a few times. Don't forget, you also have a pleather holster for his pistol. It simply slides in and this strap goes over the top. Now, it is pleather, and unfortunately, the little sight on my pistol scratched and split the pleather as it was going in. Not ideal. I'll be trying to get a replacement for the harness piece, but something that you should definitely be careful with when you're sliding the pistol into the holster. Coming down to the legs, once again, if you do want to count the flight suit as one solid thing, you absolutely can, but in figure format, the pants are separate to the shirt. Now, the pants are slightly baggy, which is good for articulation, but not overly so to where they look ugly. And the design is super asymmetrical. You've got a smaller thigh plate on one side, a much larger one on the other. This kind of looks like a Death Trooper armor piece, but painted in a completely different color. Once again, these little canisters are removable if you so choose. You also have a knee pad which looks very Boba Fett-esque. And lastly, a split-cut boot design. Oh yes, you all know I love a good split-cut boot. Now, the shoes themselves are nicely textured. They look like pleather. They're also dirty and grimy with some tread fully sculpted underneath. For a quick side-by-side comparison, here we have Blurrg on the left and the new 2.0 Durasteel Mando on the right. As you can see, Blurrg is bigger, of course he is. Mando is supposed to ride Blurrg, and don't you worry, we will pop him on the Blurrg a little bit later. But as you can see, compared to a normal 1/6 scale figure, Blurrg is a lot bigger. Next up, for a much cuter comparison, here's my dog Wanda. Now, first of all, thank you Wanda for sitting so patiently for this segment, but as you can see, Blurrg takes up as much space as a real pet, but doesn't give you anywhere near as much love or cuteness as a real pet ever could. Now, if you are planning on popping this guy in the collection, hopefully this gives you a real-world idea of how big he really is. Going over articulation, do bear in mind this is my personal copy of the figure, so I'm going to be a little bit more careful. Starting off with the helmet, it's on a double ball peg at the base of the helmet and at the base of the neck, looking forward and back, swivel and a ton of pivot side to side. The arms will go up to there, they will go forward and back on soft ratchets, butterfly joint at the shoulder that also hinges up and down, swivel at the bicep, double bend at the elbow going way past 90, plus of course a regular 1/6 scale wrist peg. The torso does crunch forward and back, swivel and pivot, hindered just a little bit by some padding. The legs do go forward to there, they will go out to there, swivel at the upper thigh, ratcheted double bend at the knee going the full way, and lastly a split cut boot design with a double ball peg down here for the ankle. Moving on to the 3 cool and 3 annoying things. Now the first annoying thing is going to be a divisive one, but Hot Toys only included one diorama style base for both characters, if you can call the Blurrg a character, but normally I'd be fine with that if it was functional. What do I mean by that? Well, when you pop Mandalorian on the base, if he's not riding Blurrg, then there's not really a proper place to put him. The Mandalorian area off to the side is very rocky. It's not very flat, so it's kind of unstable. The second annoying thing is no articulated mouth. Why? You may be thinking, well, Justin, there'd be an ugly seam if it was articulated. Well, friend, there's an ugly seam anyway, and you can't even move the mouth. Now, Hot Toys could have done switch out mouths for one being open and one being closed, but you have all of the ugliness of the seam, but no functionality. The third annoying thing is this teeny pin is still really fragile. It locks in super securely to this port. Guess that's a good thing so it doesn't fall out, but when you try and take it out, it could potentially snap off. At least it did on my original. And it's the same brittle plastic here with the new one. The first cool thing is the new, much softer padding, so Mando can articulate way better than he could originally. Now, there is still padding here, so it's slightly restricted for certain poses, but this guy can move way easier than the 1.0. The second cool thing is, thanks to the combination of joints in the legs, Blurrg does have some posability left and right, even when he's locked on the display base, even though I complained earlier that this could be a problem. Luckily, you do still have a little bit of movement. The third cool thing is Hot Toys took the chance to update the paint applications on Mando, and luckily, it was for the better. The new helmet is a lot more metallic, not sure if you can tell on camera, but you can definitely tell in person. The dirt looks a little bit more realistic, and it's a lot heavier. Plus, the colors of the flight vest are different. It's also more dirty around the edges, there's some airbrush shading. Overall, I just prefer the finish on the new one, I mean this panel right here, compared to the original on the left. As you can see, just looks a lot more HD. Wrapping up on the Hot Toys Durasteel Mando and the Blurrg from Season 1. When this 2-pack, if you want to call it that, was first announced, I thought, no Justin, you don't need another Durasteel Mando, just get the Blurrg on his own. I'm so glad I didn't take my own advice, cause this Mando is way better than the original. Okay, maybe not way better, but he's still an improvement. Starting off with the helmet, the sculpt is the same, but it's painted a lot better. The same thing can be said for the flight vest, there's more weathering, and the armor just looks slightly more HD, at least to me. Plus, the icing on the cake is the articulation. He's still padded, so he's kind of a little bit beefy, but the padding is a little bit softer, so the articulation is just straight up better. People like my buddy Posing with Peter had to do mods on the original to get the most out of him, but With this guy, I really don't think you have to. Then, the Blurrg. We can't ignore the Blurrg in the room. It is, I'm going to say it once more, absolutely massive. You can see Mando on it, right? I mean, it kind of sets the scene of how big this thing really is, both in terms of height and length, because the tail is really long. So if you don't have a space picked out for where you're going to put this thing, then maybe consider not getting him. I know, crazy to say because it's really well done, but unless you have an exact space in mind and you've measured it out to fit this darn thing, you may struggle when you eventually get him. I thought this was going to be a lot smaller than it actually ended up being, but either way, I'm still really happy I got him. Now, I got this set from toyswonderland.com. Link for that is in the description below. They do have installment plans and a points-based reward system. While you're down in the description, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button if you do like the sound of seeing your name in the end credits of my reviews. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video.